Hi everyone, welcome back to another North Green video. Today we're looking at something that can lead to massive amounts of information leakage, and it's a simple misconfiguration. It's a DNS zone transfer. If you've ever wondered how attackers can gather a load of information about a domain, this one is something to be aware of. So before we jump in, let's quickly break down what a DNS zone is. DNS is basically the internet phone book. It translates domain names to IP addresses. And a DNS zone can be thought of as a domain. It's a grouping of information. But DNS isn't just about IP addresses. It can hold a variety of information. And if we're able to gain access to a DNS zone, then we're able to gain access to an area of that phone book that holds all the different DNS records about a particular domain. Now, if you're not too familiar with DNS records, that's fine. There are a large variety of them, and they all have slightly different information that they provide. The most common ones we look at are A and AAAA records. These are responsible for taking your URLs like google.com and getting us to the website. Then we've got CNAME, that's canonical names. They can be used to map subdomains. They can be used for aliases as well. We've got host information, we've got mail server records, and we've got service records. SRV records can be really useful when it comes to identifying what service is running on a machine without actually having to port scan it. We've got start of authority records. This provides information about the domain. It provides information about the primary server. And we've got things like pointer records, which are the exact opposite of A records. They map an IP to a name instead of a name to an IP. What we're going to be looking at is name servers. So this NS record, these are name servers responsible for a domain. Every domain will have an authoritative name server that holds all of the key information about that zone, about that domain. For awareness, there are also SPF and DKIM records. These are designed to help with anti-phishing techniques. So they give a level of authority to people who are allowed to send emails on behalf of a domain. But we're going to focus on name server records because they are one of the most important records when it comes to zone transfers. Now, for DNS to work properly, administrators need a way to sync these records across multiple DNS servers. That's where a zone transfer comes in. This is useful for things like redundancy, making sure that you don't have that single point of failure for only one name server, and that you don't have different name servers with different information. You want to make sure that they have consistent information. And a zone transfer is basically just that process of copying DNS records from one name server to another. The problem being, if a DNS server isn't configured correctly, anyone can just request a zone transfer and say, hey, I'm a name server as well. Give me a copy of all of the records in this domain because I know you have that information. If someone's able to achieve that, then they're able to get lots more information than should be available to them. So let's jump in and have a look at how we can do that. We're going to be using the domain zonetransfer.me. This is a domain that's been set up by DigiNinja to allow zone transfers, to allow people to do DNS lookups as well. And we're going to be using this so we have no concern about whether or not we have permission to do this. Now, what I can do is I can run just a generic host lookup for zone transfer. And this brings me back some information. It brings me back an A record, that IP address starting with 5196. It brings me back MX records, these mail records. But that's not what I need to be able to do a zone transfer. I need to know where are the name servers for this domain. And I can get that information by simply requesting a name server. So that T means what type of record am I asking for? And I want a name server from this domain. and we see we get these two results come back. Now, these are the authoritative name servers for zonetransfer.me. These are the servers that we want to check for a zone transfer because they are the ones that have all of the information. So now we know what name servers are used by the domain we're interested in. Now we can make a request for a zone transfer. We're going to make an AXFR query. So we just type host and then AXFR. And we need to say, what domain are we interested in? Zonetransfer.me. And then specifically, what authoritative name server are we asking to give us this information? So I'm just going to go for the first one. And we can see we suddenly get a lot of information come back. So this server has allowed a zone transfer to happen, and we get lots and lots of records coming back. The value of this is that we can see we get different IP addresses coming back. We can see over here we're getting lots and lots of subdomains that could be interesting to us. We can see we're even getting references to individual names that could be helpful. And we're getting some things like aliases to different URLs as well. So from an attacker perspective, this is all useful and helpful because it allows me to get a better understanding of the domain that I'm potentially trying to attack. Now, if we look at what this looks like for an organization that has secured their name servers, let's clear the screen and have a look at Google. Now I can do the exact same as I've done before. I can run a host command for google.com. And I get my A records, I get my AAA record, and I get an MX reference to SMTP. I can then turn around and say, well, I want to know what name servers Google is using, because this is not private information. The existence of a name server is not information that is restricted from anyone being able to go and see. The protection is to stop attackers from being able to extract lots of information about it. So I can, again, run that zone transfer request, that AXFR, and say I want to know all the information about Google, and I want name server 1 to tell me that data. This is a zone transfer request. Except this time, we get this transfer failed. And that is because this has been well configured. This is not allowing a random computer on the internet to just arbitrarily say, hey, can I have all the information about the google.com domain? So this is protecting against that information leakage. And that's it about zone transfers. Why they can be useful to attackers. We get so much information that can be useful if we can get a successful zone transfer. I hope you found this useful. We will see you in the next video.